Welcome, everyone. We are going to start today's event. So welcome to today's SERIGO hybrid event entitled Measuring Impact in Rural Social Innovation, Strategies and Tools. I'm Alexandria Gill. I'm a policy expert at ADO, the European Association for Innovation and Local Development. This event is part of an EU-funded research project that is called SERIGO. SERIGO studies and tests how social innovation, but in particular that stemming from the social economy, can address the challenges of social exclusion in rural areas. Today is a hybrid meeting because the project partners are here in Maribor, Slovenia, where we have pilot testings, and we are happy to welcome, therefore, all of our project partners in the room. But we are also joined by some 80 people online, so welcome to those of you online as well. Some housekeeping, well, only one rule, questions, so please, if you're online, ask your questions as they come to you in the chat. We will try to take as much as possible, as many as possible, or you could raise your hand once I open for questions. If you're in the room, please raise your hand. And if you ask a question, please speak as loud as possible so that people online can hear you. Today's event focuses on social impact measurement, a theme that perhaps unsurprisingly came up as the top one that our pilot partners wanted to hear about from peers across Europe. So this is why we are all here today, here and online. We therefore have two panels this morning, which will try to answer to two questions. Why is it so important to talk about and do social impact measurement, especially when it comes to working with different stakeholders in the ecosystem? And the second question is it possible to do this in a way that is accessible and not too resource intensive? Before we move on, we have a short poll for you, a short waking up exercise. So you're going to have a QR code appearing on the screen at home and here, or wherever you are. Please answer this question. There should be QR codes. I'll give you a few seconds to do that. The first question is, what does social impact mean to you? The first words that come to mind. Okay, we have the effect of my activities. Good. We need more. Okay, change. Improve social inclusivity, societal change. A few more. Okay, well-being. Changes due to a certain action, lasting structural changes in social cohesion. Nice. Positive changes for a better world. Impact on communities, for instance. Yeah. Change, development, societal change, long-term effects. Okay, so we will keep them. I think it's important to keep those words in mind as we go along the morning. Now we can move on, I think, to the second question. So which word comes to mind when you think about social impact measurement? Maybe it is the word scary or hard, or it is KPI, or it is target, or beneficial. Yeah, so think along these lines, just to set a bit of the tone for the day. I'm sure that these words are going to come again and again. Okay, so difficult, yes, we expected that. Beneficiaries, nice. Upscale, okay. And responsibility, quality of life indicators, continuous learning. Yes, this is going to come again and again, I think, today. Complex. Good changes. Yes. Lived experience. Yes, I think I know who wrote that. Continuous learning. Okay. Difference. Okay. That's nice. We'll also keep those words in mind along the morning. As we move on now, I'll just give you one definition, because I think a lot of people here like definitions. So I'll give you one definition looking specifically at the social economy for a moment. What the European Commission tells us about social impact measurement and management. So social impact measurement and management helps social economy entities to understand and demonstrate their contribution to society while providing valuable information to achieve their social mission. But impact evidence is also used to diversify sources of funding, financing, tap into public and private markets, and communicate transparently with internal and external stakeholders. It's a long definition. There's a lot of things in there. I think a lot of things are going to come again in the different presentation, but I wanted to share some maybe deliberately provocative thoughts of mine here that relates maybe more broadly to social innovation. And feel free to react on that. I'm telling that to all of our panelists. Let's be honest, social innovation is by nature quite unpredictable. It's not just about the outcomes, it's actually more often about the journey, the process, and sometimes that journey takes us somewhere completely unexpected. So when we talk about measuring social impact, especially at the very beginning of a project or an initiative, it almost could feel antithetical to want to set targets. It could even have a perverse effect, forcing projects to stay on a rigid path instead of learning from the communities they want to serve. And yet, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be doing impact measurement, that we shouldn't try. And it doesn't mean that some models do not allow for this learning. So we must evaluate social impact, but we need to do it in a way that respects the complexity, the uncertainty, and the transformative potential of social innovation. Which leads me to our first panelist, who is online. My colleague, Shannon Foman, Senior Project and Policy Officer at ADL. Shannon, I want to ask you, why is it so important to do social impact measurement? How is it key to work with the ecosystem broadly? And maybe could you tell us a bit more about how the EU specifically supports this? Shannon, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. You able to hear me okay?
Yes, we are.
Okay, I'm just trying to set up my PowerPoint. One moment, please, because I'm on the wrong slide. There we go. So good morning. It's a pleasure to be here and to speak today about a topic that's crucial for anyone striving to make a difference, social impact measurement. As you introduced me, my name is Shannon Foman, and for over 15 years, I've been working here in Brussels, much of that time as a policy and advocacy director for various non-governmental organizations. And in those roles, a core focus has always been, how do we really know if we're achieving the social changes we aim for? How can we prove that as well? So, given the limited time we have, or I have, I want to dive right in and offer a concise European perspective on social impact measurement. Now, I'll only provide an overview because other speakers will delve into more detail and give you concrete examples of social impact assessments and measurements in practice. But what I want to do is to set the scene by outlining the prevalence in EU policies and frameworks, its role in social ecosystems, and how it's embedded in funding, evaluation, and policy. Then I'll also highlight the value of conducting social impact measurements in your own organizations, vital for empowering you as change makers. To ensure we're all on the same page, I wanted to clarify some terms. Of course, Alex has already given you some definitions, but I'll add to them. So when talking about impact assessment in general, we mean the process of evaluating the potential effects of a policy or a project, considering both environmental and social aspects. Now, a social impact assessment is more specific. It's about identifying, analyzing, and predicting the possible social consequences. And I stress possible because we're looking ahead. So the possible social consequences, both the good and the bad, the intended and the unintended of something we're planning to do, like a new community project or a change in local governance or regulations. Crucially, this kind of assessment happens before implementing the project or policy and is part of the planning process. Social impact measurement, on the other hand, focuses on understanding and quantifying the social outcomes and changes that have already occurred due to an activity. So instead of looking ahead, it looks backwards. It's about understanding and, where possible, quantifying the social outcomes and the changes that have already resulted from what an organization has done. So this happens during or after the project or policy is underway, and often during certain moments, such as the midterm review or at the end of a certain action. So to put it simply, social impact assessment anticipates change, while social impact measurement observes change. Both are vital if we want to achieve real, lasting, positive social change. Assessments help us plan better, and measurements help us learn and improve as we go. And here's a key point for today. The European Union is committed to social impact measurement and management, known as the SIM, SIMM, involving the systematic evaluation of an organization's social effects. So in line with the definitions already touched on in the cloud. So the EU has been integrating social impact measurement and management into different policy frameworks, evident in various initiatives and recommendations aimed at supporting the social economy. The EU isn't just talking about social impact. It's actively integrating it and embedding social impact measurement across its funding mechanisms, evaluation processes, and policy frameworks. And it's increasingly becoming a requirement for you as well when applying for EU funding, carrying out projects, convincing policymakers, and showcasing to donors the impacts of your work. You see this with ESF and InvestEU or EASY funding. You see it in your evaluation frameworks as well, and in policy development. This is especially important for those of you working in the social economy. We see this integration in several ways. The EU has various initiatives and recommendations that aim to support the social economy, recognizing its potential to address key social changes. For example, in 2023, the European Commission adopted a Council recommendation specifically focusing on developing framework conditions for the social economy, which you probably already know. But this framework encourages member states to embed the social economy into their own policies, creating the right support and environment for social organizations to thrive. Secondly, the EU provides guidance. It offers support to member states on how to design their public policies and legal frameworks to effectively support social economy initiatives. And this includes everything from improving the overall policy landscape to providing specific guidance and building the evidence base for what works. Thirdly, the EU promotes methodologies. It supports the use of tools like social return on investment and has developed its own guidelines to help organizations measure their social impact in a robust way. So I have a slide on the social return on investment. It's for your information. I won't delve into that right now because of limited timing, but you'll have it in your package after the event. What's important to know, so I've been identifying how the EU is using social impact investment, but it's not just the EU institutions and the member states, but there's other actors involved as well. So nonprofit organizations and social enterprises are using social impact measurement and management to assess and enhance their impact, while investors and donors are seeking assurance that their contributions are generating meaningful social returns. I've already mentioned the importance of government agencies using social impact measurement and management to evaluate the efficacies of policies and programs, and academics are scrutinizing its outcomes to gauge the effectiveness of various social interventions. Most importantly, and this is a target audience that's often forgotten, but the communities and individuals who are directly affected by these initiatives have a vested interest in understanding how such efforts influence their well-being. And of course, well-being was one of the points already touched on. In case you don't know by now why you and your organization should be thinking about social impact measurement and management, I just want to add a few additional points to those that Alex already mentioned. Ultimately, social impact measurement and management is crucial for making informed decisions, promoting sustainable practices, fostering accountability, and enhancing transparency, thus generating greater trust and credibility through evidence-based storytelling and communication, which leads to greater influence in policy and advocacy, thus being more impactful. So quite simply, applying social impact measurement and management brings significant benefits. By understanding the social impacts of your activities, you can make more informed choices, ensuring that your work truly contributes to sustainable development. And SIM fosters accountability, and not only to funders, but also to the communities you serve, as I already mentioned, building trust and strengthening your relationships with all of your stakeholders. Crucially, in today's world, a strong social impact measurement and management framework can make your organization much more attractive to investors and donors who are increasingly prioritizing social returns alongside financial ones. So for those of you in the social economy, this kind of framework is particularly vital. It allows you to clearly demonstrate the unique value you create as a social economy actor. As you put people and the planet first, the SIM provides evidence to showcase this to policymakers, funders, and the wider public. This helps you access funding, as I've highlighted. And it truly supports the impactful policy changes you're seeking. So ultimately, this is not just about collecting data, it's about using insights to maximize your positive impact and minimize any negative consequences. I want to be honest, implementing social impact measurement and management isn't always easy. It often requires resources, expertise, and time, and the complexity can feel overwhelming. One of the biggest hurdles is the lack of standardized metrics. It's not always easy to compare impact across different organizations or projects when everyone is measuring things in different ways. However, the EU acknowledges these challenges and offers support. There are ongoing efforts to develop common frameworks and standardized models to make measurements more consistent. And a key principle to keep in mind is proportionality. This means that the effort you put into social impact assessment should be balanced against the potential benefits and the scale of your project. And I want to add one more thing. It's important to acknowledge that environment and social impacts are often interconnected. To truly assess the impact of a project, it is key to understand the project's impact on the ecosystem and the services that the ecosystem provides. To support you in this journey, the European Commission provides various tools and resources. For example, the Better Regulation Toolbox offers comprehensive guidelines on conducting impact assessments. So while there are challenges, there's also support available to help you overcome them. I've provided you also here a list of relevant resources that will be helpful for you to look at following the event in order to delve deeper into the topic. But I trust that the other speakers will also be providing more information to guide you as well and go deeper into these models that you can adhere to. But to wrap up, I want to emphasize that social impact measurement and management are powerful tools for driving positive change. They provide you evidence you need to demonstrate your value, attract resources, and make informed decisions, and be accountable to those you serve. While challenges exist, the European perspective emphasizes support, guidance, and proportionality. I encourage you to explore the resources I've provided and to delve deeper into impact assessment and to start incorporating its principles into your work. It's an investment, but it's an investment that will pay off in greater effectiveness, stronger partnerships, and ultimately a bigger and more lasting positive impact on our world. So I provided you also an example of a social impact assessment in the slides that you can look at later. But at this stage, I'll just thank you for your attention and wish you the best of luck in your efforts to delve deeper into this topic.
Thank you so much, Shannon. We have some time to take questions. I don't see questions online so far. Are there questions in the room for Shannon? Yes, Barbara.
Hi, Shannon. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you for the very interesting talk and providing the European perspective and also the policy push for social impact measurement. You mentioned proportionality as a key guiding factor in how to set up social impact measurement. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about how it looks concretely. I know that usually there is this indication of 5 to 10% of the whole budget that you could use for evaluation efforts, but what's your impression for that?
I think the more money you're requesting for a project, the higher the demands are generally in providing the evidence of your impact. But the challenge is sometimes that there's so much reporting required to showcase your impact that you're forgetting to actually do the work that you're intending to do. So that continues to be a major challenge for most of us in the NGO world trying to have a social impact. So what's generally useful, what I've found, is to develop a type of monitoring and evaluation framework and learning framework in your organization that you standardize so that you have this common way of acting and preparing your work so that it becomes systematized and doesn't cause you that much extra work when you're implementing a project. I can give you an example from my previous job. We would develop a monitoring, evaluation, and learning framework, which we would apply systematically throughout the organization, and then also identify the rhythm of measurement. So how frequently, every 6 months, every year, and we would have sometimes different rhythms according to different type of reporting. But then we would also identify the documents we would use. So often we were producing quarterly reports to the board, monthly newsletters, regular updates on the social media coverage, which had hard quantifiable impacts. So these kinds of figures and documents we could use as a way to systematically be gathering evidence towards showcasing our impact for the final midterm review and the final report. And so these are ways, they're kind of shortcuts that once you embed this type of monitoring and evaluation framework into your work, it makes the overall process of measuring your impact a lot less complex because it becomes a part of your everyday work. So that is where I feel you can address the most with the proportionality issue, because you'll find that you don't have to do as much for certain projects because it's a part of your broader organizational work implementation. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Shannon. We have more questions now from the chat. The first question from Giorgio. Does the measurement take into account different cultural differences in order to compare results? Cultural differences are impacting people's sensitiveness. Shannon, are you able to answer? Would you like Giorgio to specify?
No, I understand the question. I think it's a really essential question, especially having previously worked at the European Network Against Racism, where our own biases come into play all the time. And it raises the essential question about setting up the indicators, because we're always required to come up with indicators, but if we are biased in the change that we're trying to measure, and we're not considering that holistic approach of both the social and environmental as well as the cultural things, the cultural aspects, then we're not going to be monitoring potentially the right thing. So that is essential also in terms of really understanding different elements of what it is you're trying to measure, and comes into play in that kind of preparatory phase of monitoring in terms of getting the right indicators and being conscious of your own biases in determining the cultural indicators as well.
Thanks, Shannon. As we are early, bizarrely, I will take the last question, which is from the chat. From Alan, I wanted to ask if there were examples of social impact measurement being incorporated at cluster/ecosystem level to achieve better balance of outcomes for businesses, public sector, and society. Wow, good luck, Shannon.
I'm afraid I don't know that answer. So good luck to Shannon is a good question, a good point to me. I'm sorry, I'm not able to provide that evidence, but we could keep it as a homework assignment between Alex and I, and we can get back to you on that. So just to make sure we have the question, you have it documented right there, right, Alex? So I don't have to take note of it. I think that's something we can research and provide in follow-up.
Definitely, yes. Thank you, Ellen. Well, in this case, we'll take more questions at the end of the first panel anyway, so if you have more questions for Shannon or if they come up in your head later on, that's okay. Keep them. But for now, I am going to go to our second speaker of the day, who is in the room with us, Matthias Czernigoy. I rehearsed that. From the University of Ljubljana. Matthias, you were involved in the development of a national framework for measuring impact destined to social enterprises. You were doing this with the government. Can you tell us a bit more about the genesis of this, what it entails, and maybe some early intel?
Okay, thank you. It's nice to be here to share this tool model we have developed in Slovenia to measure social impact. It's not just a tool, it's a process of measuring it. We heard it's not about just about the results, but also the journey, the activities, and so on. So I will start with presenting the need to standardize the process, because as we heard, we don't have methodologies that are standardized that allows you a comparison of the results of different social enterprises and other organizations operating in social economy. So we probably all agree that social enterprises and organizations, social economy in general, are driven by profit missions rather than financial results. So one would expect that methodology, standards, and so on would develop in this part of the economy, but it's not the case. So everything we have developed at the moment was developed by traditional sector, influenced primarily by large corporations and investors. And the problem is that this is not very useful in social economy. So we have a gap here. So we have a need to develop something that will be more appropriate for the organizations in social economy. So We heard about the benefits. We heard that we need to measure because if you are driven, if you want to generate some social impacts, you probably want to show the results you are providing to the society because, yeah, you have to, in this way, you can secure the funding from the government or other investors. And if we fail to do so, then we are financially constrained and we are limited in the activities that we can perform in a society and also generate the
Matthias, you might be changing the seat for me so that people online can hear you better. We're getting feedback that it's not so good. I'm sorry about this.
Is this working?
This should be.
So it's not surprising that governments started to promote the development of social impact measurement in social economy. Here in Slovenia, we took a very specific approach. So Slovenia decided to impose an obligation for social enterprises to measure and report social impact. But because being aware that we don't have standardized methodologies and tools, they decided to develop a tool, the model that will be later on used by social enterprises to do the measurement. And we got this important job to develop the model. So we tried to first see what is the situation in the sector. So what are the measurement practices? What are the competencies of the social enterprises to do the measurement? And of course, also what are the types of social impacts these organizations generate. So we did a survey first, and here you can see briefly the main results. So we see that at the moment, less than half of the social enterprises were measuring social, which is quite surprising because they are primarily set up to generate social. So they also cite some reasons behind that they are not measuring. So we see that's very important to know that these are small organizations. So they lack employees. They think it's quite a complex task. They lack knowledge. They don't know what indicators to use. They don't have the right data and so on. As found also by other studies, we found that those who did measure use their own methodologies, so nothing standardized like SOI. We heard about SOI before. So SOI was the one or only one methodology that was known at that time by Slovenian enterprises. And we also investigated a bit what are the purposes of measurement. So we see that they see this important, especially because of internal needs, because employees and managers will need this information in managing the companies, but also some external stakeholders like the general public or investors. We also investigated a little bit the factors behind the decision to adopt such a impact measurement. So here we see that we investigate two types of factors, so organization characteristics and entrepreneur characteristics. So we see that if you have important, we saw that if you have important influence of investors, there is a higher probability that you will adopt social impact measurement. We didn't found significant effects of the importance of employees, even though we see that the internal use is quite important for them. Then we saw that if the organization is using or apply the kind of strategic management, there is also a high likelihood that they will adopt also impact measurement. And also that the probability to adopt the measurement will depend on the type of funding or resources, financing resources you are using. So there is a higher probability that you will measure if you are using grants compared to debt. So those companies that are financed with a, let's say, substantial percentage of debt, there is a lower probability that they will measure. So banks, it looks like the banks are not interested in social impact as for example, the governments or other donors providing grants to the companies. Then on the other side, you see entrepreneurial characteristics affecting the likelihood of adoption of measurement. So those companies or entrepreneurs that are willing to learn, those are the guys that are pursuing measurement of the impact. That means that they want to understand, want to identify the right impact. So they are not looking for simple solutions or quick fixes. So they are not interested just in the set of indicators. They want to learn, they want to really understand. Because those who are looking for quick fixes, like a set of indicators, just provide me a list of indicators and I will do the measurement, those are not measured. And also it depends also on the perception of the barriers. If you think that finance can solve everything, this is then not the right way to adopt social impact. So really, those who think strategically, who are willing to learn, those are the companies that will, at the end of the day, adopt impact measurement. So we started with these assumptions. Yeah, we know that these were very small companies, small organizations, with limited resources that can be dedicated to social impact measurement. So we also saw that they are generating quite a very different types of impacts. So we also wanted to build a model on the existing methodologies and standards. So we were not reinventing the wheel here. And of course, we wanted the model to be easy for use, and not just the measurement tool, but also the tool that can be used in the management of the company. So if you need information about the impact internally, that means that you also would probably like to have a tool that will be needed in managing the company. And not least, because the data will be collected across the sector in Slovenia, the government wanted to collect the data in a standardized way, to aggregate the data, to analyze the situation on the sectoral level, to better devise or develop policies and measures for the promotion of the social economy. So the basic idea behind the model, or the basic building block, is the theory of change. So the impact value chain. So as you see here, everything is centered around the social problem that is addressed by the social enterprise. So you may have one social problem, so you can deal with one or multiple. So let's say that we have a company dealing with one social problem. So if you want to deal with this social problem, you need some resources. So you have some inputs, you have to dedicate some resources. Then you have to perform some activities, and you address probably some stakeholders. And only after that, you can expect some results. And these results can come in different forms. So you have some immediate results like outputs, very tangible, very easy, basically to measure. But you may have also some outcomes. These are already some changes in the target population. So if you want to measure this is a bit more difficult because you need a feedback from your target population. It's costly, if not too complex. And then you have some impacts. These are broader effects in the society, very difficult to measure. So strictly speaking, impact is these changes in the society, but this is very difficult to measure. So we are not interested only in impacts if we talk about measuring social impacts, but the whole value chain. So the model is focused not on the results part of the value chain, but also activities and stakeholders. And this is something that can be very easily measured. So this is the structure of the model, or basically the measurement process that is standardized, proposed as a standardized process for social enterprises. So it starts with module 1. So here we collect some registry data. We ask the company about the purpose of the measurement, that later on define the complexity of the measurement. And then we investigate a little bit the social problem that is addressed. So here we ask the entrepreneur to think about the business model. So it needs he or she needs to develop a logic model to think about the activities and the objectives of these activities. And here we also try to relate the activities to SDGs, because as I said, at the end of the day, we want to aggregate the data and see also the distribution, for example, of companies and activities conducted relatively to the SDGs, for example. So in the next step, then you define the scope of the measurement. So you decide what you're going to measure. So it is necessary to measure activities. It's necessary to measure stakeholders. I think that is something that is easy to measure. And at least your results at the output level. So based on your competencies, resources, needs, you can also decide for other types of results. Then you define indicators. You can use your own one, or you can use the indicators that we integrated from the IRIS Plus database. I don't know if you are familiar with this database. There are more than 700 indicators already in the database, so you may find some relevant one for your business as well. Then in module 4, you collect the data and you enter the data for these indicators in module 4. Step 4, you present the results. If you decide to use the tool also as a management tool, then you also do an analysis. If you want to strategically set priorities, you would probably do some kind of cost-benefit analysis. So you will compare the impacts with the cost you have to perform activities to generate this impact. So if you have, normally we all have limited resources, you will set priorities, or you will invest more in those activities where you are more efficient in generating impact. And then in module 4, in the last step, the report is generated. It is in a rather technical form, so this is mainly used to report the social impact and the results measurements to the government. But can be also a useful input for your reports that can be then developed in a more user-friendly manner. So I think that we have quite a useful tool that is quite easy to tool up to the social enterprise. How complex will do the measurement? We also have a management tool, and we also have a tool that allows the government to collect the data, at least in part in a standardized way, to see what is the situation here and to have a kind of empirical basis to policy making. So where do we stand today? There is still we still don't have an obligation for social enterprises to use the tool and to measure and report. So it is still used on a voluntarily basis. We heard that many of the social enterprises are using the model. Some of them with all functionalities, others are just using the proposed measurement process. It is obligatory or still proposed to be used if you are using public finances in Slovenia. So we collected quite a lot of data already, and we are planning to update the beta version that we have at the moment. What is the feedback? A lot of positive feedback, but also some negative ones, especially that social impact measurement is very complex. I understand this negative comment more as information about the complexity of the measurement, not about the tool, because at the end of the day, we have to know that we want to develop some kind of reporting that will be comparable to financial reporting. And for financial reporting, we know we have an accountant in the company who went to school for a few years probably. And even after school, there is a need of constant learning, because we have constant changes in the accounting standards. So this guy is registering the events during the year and normally takes months to prepare the final financial report. So if you want to produce something similar for social impact, this cannot be done in a day at the end of the year. So I think that first we need some awareness that this is important. We need some awareness that this is very complex stuff, and if we want to make this comparable to financial reporting, we'll have to invest significantly more efforts into the measurement as we did in the past. So my opinion is that just establishing an obligation cannot solve this problem. So, this would be better probably implemented if it stays on the voluntary basis, but you have to increase the awareness that it's very important. You have to also educate the enterprises and so on to do the proper way.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Matthias. One question first. Am I right that Slovenia is one of the first European countries to do something at governmental level with the idea of making it compulsory at some point?
Yes, you're right. Yes, but we are still in the process of implementing the obligation. It was foresaw in the law on the social enterprises or entrepreneurship, but we need to implement.
I'm going to take questions. I don't see questions in the chat yet. I have to speak very loud. I'm sorry because the mic is a little far from me. Anyone in the room? Yes.
Thank you so much for your presentation. It's very enjoyable. I wanted to understand. I'm not sure if you've reached to that point or if you've done some analysis on that. How do you assign value for a social impact? What is a more valuable social impact and what is a less valuable social impact?
So, as I understand, you are talking about the impacts. Yeah?
Yes.
So about the results. Yeah. So if we measure, I don't know. If we measure outputs, these are really, really immediate results of your activities. Okay, so you just count the activities you did. So this can be a relevant indicator. If you want to measure outcomes, you want to measure the change on the target population. Okay, so I conduct some, I don't know, classes. I want to educate members of the target group. So I need to do an assessment of their knowledge before and after the class. Okay? And you evaluate the change. So this is the outcome. If you want to assess the impact of this, you are interested in the change in the situation in the wider population in the society because we have educated a particular part of the population. Okay, so this is still not in monetary terms. So these indicators are really, really, really relevant for the activities or the results of these activities or changes in the society. So it is rather easy compared to the SERIGO, for example, where you need to express everything in monetary terms. Because with SERIGO, you want to compare the resources you have invested in the activity with the results. And if you want to compare two things, you have to express them in the same unit. But here it's not necessary. Okay. So it's also very difficult to compare the results across the population or across the companies. But there are some indicators that are standardized. For example, I conducted 10 classes to educate young people on a specific field. Okay. I addressed 100 of needs, for example. Okay, so these are standardized measures, and this is something that can be aggregated and see and compared also to the organizations. But for the others, because these impacts are really, really different across the companies, this cannot be compared. And even with this, we here that it's very complex. If you ask the companies, to enterprises to measure in a way that will allow comparison, this will be.
Thank you.
So for one organization, probably, you can assess, what is better, because you have the results from last year, the current year you see, if you need more or less, so you can compare those years in time for a particular organization, but across organizations, it's more.
Yeah.
Yes. Go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Maybe in addition to this, because you started off saying that we need such a tool because social enterprises work differently compared to normal business. But then you develop a tool which is the same.
No,
Value chain, business model, cost efficiency,
no,
efficient. Whereas I would say the crucial point is that social enterprise deals with social life, which is much more complicated than a business, and what is the problem and what is the product, the outcome. What you now in your answer just now, I would say you very much simplifies as if it was to educate people. A lot of these social enterprises about improving social cohesion, and then we can reduce that to the number of people joining a wine tasting, but that's a very reduced reflection of what is actually a mechanism. So I wonder if turning a social enterprise impact tool or translating that from a business model is really the way to go.
May I add to Bettina, because I wanted to say the same or nearly the same. Another aspect is do you distinguish between direct and indirect impact and immediate and long-term impact?
Okay, first, I think there is a huge difference about sustainability issues in traditional sector and social economy. And also the measurement in traditional sector is very different. There we are interested in the efforts companies make to reduce negative externalities. But in social economy, we are interested in positive impacts. So this model theory of change logic model is not used in the traditional sector.
But you were talking about the outcome and what's the input and the output and the value chain. That's exactly what a normal business model is about. How much money do you put in to develop certain products, and what is the money, and what is the rate, and how cost efficient is the process? So it's still a very linear input-output model.
Sure, it should be.
No, it shouldn't.
Okay, I don't agree.
No, but because society doesn't work like that.
Sure, it should.
No, it doesn't.
I have limited resources.
It's much more complex because, for instance, the fact that you do something might already change the whole logic of the chain. So what is the outcome? Of course, I can measure how many students I have in class and how many students pass the exam, but that is not reflecting my engagement and my logic of being a teacher. It's much more than that. So you reduce it to an input-output, whereas the social enterprise tries to do something else.
But no, I have limited resources. I want to know what is the effect of using these limited resources. And I want to do activities where I can generate the highest impact. So you have to do a kind of cost-benefit analysis, even in social economy.
But the resources are not just money.
No, I agree. You can calculate cost-benefit ratio also on the, I don't know, employee you are using to conduct your activities. No problem. It's not just in monetary terms or money. Sure. So you have to do these priorities because you have limited resources, for sure.
I can see that, but I wonder if, because the idea is that social enterprise does something fundamentally different than commercial enterprises and does much more for society than producing certain products. So we develop a different kind of collaboration model, and then we try to measure their success in exactly the same limited linear way. That's my problem. I can see that it's useful for being an entrepreneur to know how much time do I put into something and what is the outcome of that. But I think we reduce the logic and the wish to construct something different by reducing it to the same one. But that's just my opinion.
No, of course. I'll just give the floor to Barbara to react before you wanted to react.
No, I wanted to ask a different
Ask the question. Okay.
No, about the complexity. So we simplify things here.
Yeah.
This is necessary. And even with this simplification, we got this negative feedback.
The reduction depends on the perspective. From which perspective? If I got from an economic perspective or from a societal perspective. For instance, if you, in terms of the opinion, is more interested in the outcome, the economic outcome. In terms of the society, it's more important to have a better condition, for instance. So there are different perspectives, and I think that the measurement depends on these different perspectives.
But you can measure the change.
Yes, you can measure the change.
Yeah, you could measure the change with the model.
I think we can take the discussion further.
Also have your opinion on the direct and indirect, immediate and long-term outcome or input impact.
Sure, very interesting. But impossible to measure. We have companies, enterprises with 10 employees working all the time. You cannot dedicate an hour or a day for social impact measurement. You cannot complicate with direct and indirect effect. You have to have a simplified solution, start measuring, and then to develop the process along the way.
But for some
I'm sorry, we're running out of time.
you have to spill over.
We're really running out of time, and I want to give the floor to Sanya now. I'm sorry,
Thank you so much.
we want to have time for Sanya, so thank you. But yes, we can continue the debates afterwards in the break as well. Please online do contribute, do ask your questions. We don't want you to feel excluded. You're really much part of this event. But now I want to give you the floor, Tanya. So we've heard a generic why. We've heard about the EU. We've heard about a governmental/national perspective. So I want to hear now. We want to hear about the local/entrepreneurial perspectives. Sanya Zelko, you're from Social Farm Korenica and Mosaic Association for Social Inclusion. I wanted to ask you, what are the challenges that your organizations have faced or face with social impact measurement? Maybe some reflections on the models that the government's proposing, but also maybe on methodologies or examples from your own work. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here and to present our experience, practice, and of course, challenges that we face when assessing the social impact. So if I may start from the beginning. Mosaic is an NGO with more than 20 years of experience. We are located in the region of Pomurje, which is in the northeastern part of Slovenia. It's known as most underdeveloped region in Slovenia with high percentage of unemployed persons. We have more than 20 professional workers who are regularly employed. Our programs include homeless shelter, residential unit for vulnerable persons, door-to-door support program for people who are threatened to become homeless. Then we deal with elderly on a daily basis with a program for a better tomorrow with dementia. We implement intergenerational programs and, of course, social activation programs for long-term unemployed persons. Social impact is actually in the core focus of our mission, of our operation, and it's also a part of our slogan. So we really are very connected to analyze, to measure, and to present our social impact. As we have heard, we also use the model that Mr. Chernikoy presented, but we combine it with a bit of other approaches that make communicating our social impact more popular, more easily to understand to vulnerable people, to municipalities, to our funders, our partners, buyers. So we are improving our measuring and evaluating and presenting each year. So if I may go through our social impacts, they are based on 4 pillars. The first one is preventing homelessness in Muria region. We have more than 30 users on a daily basis, which are accommodated in our residential unit, and more than 140 users on a yearly basis that use our professional help how to improve their life conditions at their home in rural areas, so in the villages that are far away from cities, from services, next to Hungarian border mostly. I know that the numbers are not so high because you know that in larger cities and in larger communities, the numbers are pretty much, it's another perspective. But if you, we operate in a really small region, and if we change 3 lives, former addicts, homeless people, it's a big impact on the villages, on the community, and of course to others. So I know that maybe you will see the numbers that are not so high than maybe in your environment. We create an inclusive work environment. We have created more than 80 permanent jobs for vulnerable persons. We have answered on an emerging societal problems in our region about 20 years ago when a larger industries closed. So a lot of people were unemployed, not educated, they were elderly, so they couldn't have the option to get some new knowledge and be flexible. So we created jobs that are closer to them. So in organic farming, which for rural people it's easy to learn because they do it at home, and also in tourism and service industries. In 5 years' time, in program for social activation, we have activated more than 800 persons towards finishing their education or get a job. The third pillar is revitalizing city centers and rural areas. We have completely renovated 4 abandoned farms close to the Hungarian border, gave them life. Now they are centers for elderly, for children camps, you will see a bit later. And we have completely renovated one large abandoned facility in the center of Murska Sobota, which is now visited for more than 100 people daily. We co-create a better communities on a daily basis. We have more than 40 elderly participating in our activities and more than 20 partner organizations included in our work. Regarding our social impact, measuring our social impact, at first we have designed our strategic goals perspective according to which we wish to measure these data, which I presented earlier: unemployment reduction, prevention of homelessness, intergenerational cooperation, and development of social enterprises. At the second stage, at the second step, we identify key indicators. They are usually also mandatory on a program or a project level, but we try to generalize it and then gather it on a common corporate level, and then of course communicate it. Collecting and monitoring data, teams on a program level get the data and report it to the strategic team, which gathers all of the data. We evaluate, we learn, and of course communicate. We communicate it easily through storytelling, through the eyes and words of our users, of our employees, and of course through photos, which I will also present. Mosaic funded 2 employment projects. These are Korenica Social Farm, Shalovci, which is just next to Hungarian border, and Mensana Intergenerational Center in the city of Murska Sobota. Korenica responded to emerging societal problems in a rural area where the communities are getting depopulated. Young families are moving to cities, to other countries, and mostly elderly stay in these areas. All of the services, all of the shops, posts, banks, health support is also moving to the cities. So the villages are really becoming depopulated and abandoned. And the second one is Mensana, which functions as a multi-generational center. We provide food services, laundry, and we also have a ladies shop. So Korenica Social Farm, just to be quick with each employment project, it's an organic farm. It also offers tourism services, school camps, where children can get in touch with nature, with animals, and of course also our employees. This is a quick overview of social impact of Korenica Farm. We have created more than 50 jobs, so each day on Korenica, more than 50 persons come there and work. This is Korenica before. On the second column, I will present how it is today. Then, of course, we have collaboration with more than 12 schools that visit us regularly on activities and workshops. And then we produce quality organic food products, which we sell to schools, to elderly homes, and of course to boutique organic shops across Slovenia. And also we now try to sell it also abroad. This is Korenica as it was, and on the other side you will see now 3 revitalized farms. One is Center for Elderly, one is for production of organic products, and this on the middle is third farm where we have the animal park. It's also a cultural heritage, one of the most successful farms more than 100 years ago, which was abandoned. And this from the drone footage is the whole area of Korenica. We have more than 27 hectares of land used in organic production. The easiest way to see what is Korenica, the impact, it's through the people's eyes, through people's photos, the photos that people are visiting our events, and Korenica is a live area or live buildings, and because they are visited daily, and also on the weekends, and a lot of community events is hosted here. We have a strong collaboration with municipality, so it's really important for this environment. And the second employment project, Mensana, which is a bit different than Korenica, which is really for countryside people, users. Mensana has responded for people in town, because also in our small town, Sobota, a lot of centers, cafes, restaurants that were nice to elderly people are closing, and people didn't have their own space where they can socialize, play chess, have a dessert in the morning, and stay there for a few hours just to mingle. Therefore, Mensana has transformed this large abandoned building. We have created more than 20 permanent jobs also for vulnerable persons. We provide more than 800 meals per day to also companies, for workers, and for elderly. We also transport the food to their homes. We have a store with reused furniture. We also renovate some furniture. So everybody who wishes to have vintage stuff and some special stuff with historical meaning also comes here. And we have, of course, created an inclusive place especially for elderly. This was Mensana earlier. Below, you will see a lot of trash, everything abandoned. And this the drone footage is also when Mensana was still before revitalization. We also have on one part there are flats for elderly who stay there, and below they have all the services that they need, so it's easier for them and approachable. And this is what life in Mensana looks like. So all the workshops, elderly and kindergartens come, and they have a lot of different activities. So thank you. This was.
Thank you so much, Sanja. I will now take questions. Are there questions in the chat at the moment? No, not yet.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Okay, nice. There are 50 or so people online. I really invite you to not feel shy, and please put your questions. We'll take it. Any questions in the room then? For Sanja, or for Shannon, or for Matthias, because I believe that Shannon is still with us online. And now is the time. Yes, please. Very loud.
Yes, just a comment. Thank you very much for the presentation. And what was very interesting for me from your presentation is that aside the traditional social impacts, you also mentioned the ecological and spatial impacts that the initiative determined, and I think it's very important to include that in a social impact, because we would like to also, consider everything that sustains life and so therefore ecological and spatial elements are very important to consider when we evaluate our impact. So thank you very much.
Thank you
for considering that, and that's also a point I think from the previous discussion about potential improvement maybe of social impact measurement. So beyond the solely societal impact measures. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, they are already part of the social.
Yeah.
So also our model is devoted to in part to ecological.
Still no question. I'm going to take one more question before we go on to
Alex,
break. Yes. Go on. Whoever is in Shannon.
I just wanted to add to that last point about bringing in the environmental aspects. This is precisely what I meant about having a holistic approach. It's the combination of the social and environment, and there are numerous examples of this. And if you don't have that holistic approach in determining your indicators, your impact outcomes will be quite different. Because, for instance, if you're setting up a place to enable migrants access to the community, you might be focusing just on migrant integration from that perspective. But if you're considering in terms of the environmental as well, then you're counting maybe the number of parks, the number of outdoor spaces that are bringing different actors together. So it really it kind of influences what it is you're measuring. And you've probably heard that what you don't count doesn't count in our society. So it's really important to be keeping in mind all these different things about what it is you want to count. And that also addresses the cultural biases that we apply if we don't have that holistic approach. And I just wanted, we won't have time to go through it, but I did provide an answer in the chat to that last question about the ecosystem.
Yes, thanks, Shannon. Before we go to the break, I'll just take one more question, maybe from Marie, because you haven't spoken yet.
Response to this question for Sonia.
Very loud.
Okay, it was a question for Sonia. Thank you for an amazing presentation. How do you find the experience of the ongoing sustainability of the social enterprise, and how much of the effort do you put into looking for funding to keep the business viable? Would you regard that as a large part of what you do?
A very important part, because we are a large organization, therefore we need to keep a lot of jobs permanently. And mostly our programs are 3 or 5 years, and then we have to wait for the ministry to publish a new program in the next perspective. And just now we had almost 2 years of where the perspective, cohesion perspective, we didn't have the programs, and we put a lot of effort, Erasmus, Horizon, Interreg, and a lot of other small programs and projects that we can keep our organization going. And now we have to again search for new funding to be sustainable when all of the programs end. And of course, we are always innovative. We search for new projects, new approaches to deal with problems that emerge every year. Everything is really live flexible.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm afraid we cannot take more questions right now, but you're staying with us this morning, so we can ask the questions a little bit later. I think we have more time. This closes the first panel, so I want to thank you, Sanja, Matthias, and Shannon, for joining us. We're going to take now a 15 minutes break on the dot. So I think we'll be back at 35, and not after. We will be talking about very, very practical tools to measure impact. So stay with us if you're online, have a coffee, and we also have coffee here. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes.
Well, welcome back, everyone. I'll be alone here, a little bit lonely, but there are really 3 people online with the second panel. So as promised from the why, we now move on to a very concrete how. We asked our 3 next speakers to tell us about very concrete and very tested tools that they are using to measure impact, which aren't too scary, I promise. And so we start with Rafaela Friedl, co-managing director of Hobby Lobby and expert in impact measurement based in Austria. Rafaela, thank you so much for being with us. And I would like to ask you to tell us a bit more about the Hobby Lobby and to tell us about the model that you have developed, which uses indicators in a very accessible way. Rafaela, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Alexandra. I'm very looking forward to telling you everything about Hobby Lobby and impact measurement. I hope you can see the slides. Yes, I can see that you can already see the slides. So I'm very honored to be here today with you. Thank you for inviting me. As Alexandra already said, I'm the co-managing director of Hobby Lobby. And I'm also doing the impact measurement for Hobby Lobby for 4 years now. So I have a little bit of experience in this area. But before we start off with the impact model that we are using, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what Hobby Lobby actually does. We know that every 5th child in Austria lives in poverty or close to poverty. So a lot of kids cannot afford free informal education activities. They cannot afford 100 euros to go horse riding or playing the piano or going to a soccer club. That costs a lot. And we know that a lot of families cannot afford that. But we think, or we know, that during those activities, the kids really learn really learn social competences. They broaden their networking skills and their network. They have so many different things that they learn in informal settings that they can't learn during school. So this is why we decided that we need to offer free leisure activities that don't cost anything. Our vision is that we live in a world in which education takes place at any given time and place, not just in school, and every child has equal opportunities to discover and realize their potential. And I think, and we know that this is not the case right now because of lack of money. And the mission is to have meaningful leisure time activities that do not remain a privilege to the privileged society. And this is why we offer low threshold leisure activities with a focus on physical and mental health. I think it's really important for you to know what we're doing, for you to understand how we are measuring our impact. Why? Because the Hobby Lobby started when a kid came up to the founder, Rosa Bergmann, because she was a teacher in a school, and the kid was telling her that she doesn't want to go home because at home she's only on her phone. And if she can't do anything with her, why can't she just stay in school and do homework with her? And Rosa told her, you can go home, you can do all the leisure activities that I did when I was a kid. You can go dancing, you can go horse riding, you can play the piano, you can go to a soccer club, whatever. And the kid looked at her and she was like, yes, but we cannot afford it. And so she started the Hobby Lobby, and during the phase of creating free leisure activities for kids, she found out and she saw that the kids are actually evolving, and they're actually building social skills, and they're actually getting more friends and are less often on their own and alone, and their physical and mental health increases. She saw that, but she didn't know how to measure it. And so she got me on board, and I did study statistics, so I was very excited to do this. And in the beginning, it was very hard for me to get into this because we saw that the kids improve, but how do we really know that they improved? And I think this is very important, and this is a very important question we have to ask of ourselves. I already heard in the beginning that you already talked about why we need impact measurement. And for us, it was, of course, the internal purpose. Are we achieving our goals? What did we do well? What didn't go as planned? And we can also make informed decisions. I can also strategize due to the things I already know due to impact measurement. So it's really important for internal purposes, social purposes, because for us, it's very clear that we do not want to do what we do if we don't make an impact and if we haven't set the right goals. And for external purposes, of course, so we need to have accountability towards the stakeholders and our donors and funders. Those are the three different reasons why we're doing impact measurement. And we are doing our impact measurement that relays on the social reporting standards. And that's a model. It's an IOOI model. You can see it here, input, output, outcome, and impact model. That is very important for us to follow through this. Why? It's because they're recognized and unified standards for social enterprises, and the thing is they're unified. So all the social enterprises can put this on and can have the same structure of an impact report, which is really important because then you can actually compare your impact measurement with the impact measurement of someone else, or your impact measurement of 2025 to your impact measurement of 2023, which is also very important. And I will talk about the IOOI model with you right now and how you could integrate it in your organization. Of course, the first steps, I think you already worked on that, is the initial situation and also the problem statement. what's the problem? Why does it need to be addressed? Why is it relevant? What is the scientific basis? It's not very smart to tackle a problem that it's just a problem for 2 or 3 people, or where we don't have any scientific basis. For example, in Hobby Lobby, we know that kids live in poverty. They cannot afford it. They are at home on their phones. So this is the problem statement that we are actually creating. And then the most important thing that I realize a lot of organizations actually don't really, or struggle identifying it, is the target group and really reaching the target group, not only geographically, so it's a rural area, but also demographic characteristics, and is really the target group in the things that I offer. Do I really reach the target group or not? So it needs a very specific skill sets to really reach them, and to also identify them for your impact measurement. If you have the target group, you actually have a lot of work already done, because then you know who you want to address, and the databases that you get out of it, it actually makes sense. And then you have to ask yourself the question, what exactly should change as a result of the target group engaging with your project? What exactly are the changes? We're getting into this in the outcome section, but this is a question that you should really know the answer to if you're talking about your project, because otherwise, in my opinion, it's really hard to measure the impact if you don't already know what should change. Now we're getting closer into the input section. And my first, or the first steps are very hard to take, but I guarantee you, you can just go with the input section at first and then go further to the output and the outcome and the impact. Start small, take baby steps, and you already did something for impact measurement. And it's really important. And the two, the input and the output, there are two things that you can implement in your organization very, very quickly. So my recommendation would be, if you're using impact measurement, if you're implementing it, have the input and the output ready. Those are the easiest things to measure, and you can also say a lot about your impact measurement. In the input, you ask yourself a question: what resources are you using to reach the target group? What are your financial resources? You probably already know it, because you have to have a financial report. What are your material resources? Do you have toys? What equipment do you have? Do you have cars or not? What are your time resources? Do you have volunteers? Are they contributing to your time? Do you have staff? How many staff members do you have? And do you have cooperation partners? Are you collaborating with another organization? So this is everything that's put into your organization to reach the target group. So your money and your resources. Very, very easy, or easier to know and to figure out. And if you already have all those numbers, you already have something for your impact measurement. So it starts small. For Hobby Lobby, for example, we have course hours, we have costs per course, we have total costs per course, we have staff members, soccer balls, chess pieces, whatever you can think of. This is just an example. And how do we know it? We know it because we are already tracking it, but didn't really think about it as impact measurement tracking. Yeah, so it starts small. That's what I really wanna say here. And that's just an example. So for your organization, it can be different. Probably you won't have 126 soccer balls, but 2 cars or a computer or whatever. Yeah. And then we're going on to the next impact measurement stage. That's the output. So we start at the bottom, the input, what do we put in to our organization? And the next level is what services were provided to reach the target group. What did we as organization provide to teach the target group? So how many did we reach? So individual based, how many participants did we reach? What's the percentage of the participants? Activity based, how many courses, how many workshops, how many hours of support did we deliver? Location based, of course. Are we only in one school? Are we in many schools? Are we in different countries? Are we in different rural areas? And programs. What specific programs did you offer? Did you, for example, only offer something for one target group, or maybe also for the other target group? Or do you have topic related programs that you're offering? For example, are you offering scientific courses and sport or physical activities? Those are two different programs, and you can also count them. This is very easy to know as well. At Hobby Lobby, for example, we have this many course spots that we've already reached, over 10,000 course spots that we already handed out to kids since our 6 years of being here and offering our courses. We reached over 6,000 children. We had over 808 different courses, more than 400 volunteers, more than 92 hobbies, youth leaders. So this is a different program that we are offering. The program is for our kids. They're between 10 and 14 years. And if they reach the age of 14, they can no longer participate in a course, but they can be youth leaders and co-host a course and their hobby. So here we also show that we have a different program. We're in 14 different locations and in 3 different countries. This is everything that's output related. And it's easy to measure that because you do have maybe an Excel sheet where you have all the classes that you're reaching or that you're going into. You have all your volunteers that are there and offering that time. You have all the courses. You have to know the numbers, and probably a lot of you guys already have those numbers. And again, just like in the input, it's very easy because it's already important for impact measurement. So those 2 steps, input and output, I can guarantee you are easier to get. And if you already have them, you have a lot for your impact measurement. And then we get to the fun part. It's the outcome part. The fun part is we really want to know if we have an impact on the kids. What impact has been achieved with the existing resources for the target group? What changes would you like to see, and at which level does the project have an effect on your impact group? And for you to start with this, I showed you here how I did it. You formulate hypotheses. So since the kids are at Hobby Lobby, since they are here, they have more friends, they are working together in a group, they think critically, whatever. And then you summarize those hypotheses and have, such as I did, soft skills, leadership skills, networking skills, and mental activities. And you summarize them, and then you have your impact level. And from there on, in Hobby Lobby, we have those 4 impact areas that we formulated. And if you have those, you have to decide which kind of data collection method you want to use. So if you don't want to have a lot of work, you work with, or if you just start with anecdotes, with case studies, you see something happening, you document it by taking pictures, you monitor the participant numbers, you structure interviews, and then if you deep dive, you have Those collection methods with focus groups, participant observation by external professionals, and then standardized quantitative surveys where you ask your target group if something changed. And then you ask them in the beginning and at the end. This is a lot of work, but if you start now, it gets easier, easier, and easier. For example, this is an example of Hobby Lobby, how we did this. We asked our youth leaders in the beginning, it's the yellow parts, how easy it is for them to work in a group, to respect others, to ask questions. And then the blue things are when we ask them at the end. So you actually see that we do have an impact because they say in the beginning that only 35% say it's easy to ask questions if they don't understand something. In the end, everyone says that. And we can also put it here, and it's really, really important for our donors and funders to see that, but also for us to see where we want to focus. And the last one is the last I, it's the impact, and I'm going to go through this a little bit faster. It's what societal impact has been achieved with existing resources. And here I can guarantee you it's the hardest part to measure, and a lot of organizations can't measure it because you need to have a very long longitude study. So please don't be afraid of getting into the IOI model just because of the impact. Just go into it and leave the impact on the side, because there you would need a lot of resources and a very long study. But I can assure you, if you've already been impact measuring for 4 or 5 years, you can start with the impact and the long effects of your organization. Right. So I hope it wasn't too long. I know, I'm sorry. I kind of talked a little bit too long, but thank you very much. Here are my contact information. If you want to get into the IOI model a little bit further, if you want to talk, and I think we now also have some time for questions.
Indeed. I don't know if you can hear, but there was a round of applause in the room. Thank you so much, Rafaela. I don't see questions in the chat yet, but we'll take some in the room. Yes, please.
Hi, thanks very much for that. That's very interesting. I'm really interested in qualitative measurement of impact and the use of narrative and case studies, and because obviously that's really powerful, but I'm wondering how that's received by your funders and what they make of that.
That's a very good question. We also have qualitative methods that we are using, but only in addition to the quantitative standardized interviews that we are also doing, because unfortunately, for funders, and it's very important to have the hard facts, and you can give them the hard facts, unfortunately, only with quantitative studies. But in my opinion, quantitative studies don't count as much if you don't have qualitative methods as well. So in my opinion, it's very important to have both, to have on the one side anecdotes that really reach you emotionally, and target group or subgroups that you're actually interviewing and looking into, and on the other hand also have something quantitative, which is very important. If you only focus on the qualitative methods, there you would actually need someone external who is doing the research for you, because if you are doing this, if you are only observing your target group working, then people could say that that it's too connected, and your kind of view is too connected to the people, and you of course want to see a difference and an impact you're making. So I would, if I only did qualitative research, I would actually prefer to do it with someone external.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rafaela. Any other question? We can take one more in the room before we move on to our second panelist. Not yet. We can't keep Rafaela for too long because she has some duty. So if there is a burning question, it's now or never. Yeah.
Hi, I mean, I know the Hobby Lobby and hi, I'm Barbara. We spoke a couple of times. But I just want to invite you to briefly say that because I think it's amazing that you try to assess the impact by following up your former participants, and I just want to showcase it because I think it's so special.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. Yes, we do have a study with our former target group and kids that were at Hobby Lobby with 35 kids. We're planning on doing it for the next 10 years. It's our second year now. And yeah, it's a lot, but that's why I also said in the presentation, I think you really need to be settled to start something like this, and it doesn't have to be the first thing you're doing when you're starting impact measurement. But thank you very much.
All right, we have a little bit of time, so I'll ask a question to you before you leave. We know that there are many impact measurement models. One could say almost as many as there are organizations. When an organization is small and maybe has less experience, how do you think they can go about to choose the right framework or the right model and the right first step for them?
That's a very good question. I can also only tell you how we did it. For us, it was very important that it can be, that it's a professional thing and that it can actually be compared to other organizations. So that's why we decided to do it on the social reporting standards and to get into the social reporting standards, because we know it's a proven method already. And if we are doing the IOI model and that is based on the social reporting standards, then it does make a difference, and it does show that we are actually working very professionally. And in my opinion as well, as I already said, the input and output part of the IOI model are pretty easy to have. So it's very easy for you to start with impact measurement. And because I know in a lot of different other models, it's very hard for you because you're already like, I have so many things to do and it's overwhelming and I don't have the time because I have to run my organization and my company, and then on the side I also have to do this. And with the IOI model, you already, when running your company, you already have the input and output numbers ready.
Thank you so much, Rafaela.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I know that you cannot stay much longer, so we will share the slides. Thank you again so much.
Thank you. And if you have any other questions, I already shared my contacts. I'm very happy to hear from you.
We will carry on the questions if they come up later. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. So I now have the pleasure to give the floor to Sarah Henderson. Sarah, you are Head of Insights and Influencing at People's Voice Media in the UK, and you will tell us more about the power of stories when it comes to measuring social impact. Sarah, the floor is yours.
Yes, hi. Can you see my screen there? Yes, I can see it in the background there. Brilliant. So yeah, thank you for the introduction and thank you for inviting me today. So I'm going to be talking a bit around using lived experience in impact assessment. So very much a qualitative model. Now, I've got quite a lot to get through, so I'm going to share at the end a link to a resources folder, which will also include these slides. So if anything is missing, we can make sure that's included. So just bear with me a moment and I will just get into this. So People's Voice Media works with lived experience. As I said, we work predominantly in the UK and across Europe. And we use a particular model called community reporting, methodology called community reporting, which I will go into a bit more detail on in a moment. And we use it to gather and curate lived experience and derive insights from that. And that can be used at various levels of a project. And today, obviously, talking about it in relation to impact measurement. which we have been increasingly using it for ourselves and our partners. So, as we've already discussed, there are a lot of evaluation methods, but quite a lot of them are limited when it comes particularly to understanding sort of those multifaceted organisational activities that produce multifactorial change. So when you're dealing with a complex environment or a complex project, it's going to be difficult to measure that with just numbers alone or just a survey, so on and so forth. So really, when you're measuring these kind of activities, you want to sort of see things like, are there new social relations? Is there empowerment? Is there self-worth? Is there a combination of those effects? And that will require that kind of contextual knowledge that really you can only get from talking to people. So around down the side here, we've got various ways we use to gather impact data currently, which lived experience kind of sits in contrast to a lot of them. So you'll sometimes hear lived experience also talked about as experiential knowledge. And it just simply focuses on what we can learn from people's lives and their experiences of different situations. And we use this at People's Voice Media to support people's participation in research, in policy making, in service development, and in decision-making processes. And obviously impact assessment is a big part of that. And increasingly it's acknowledged as a valid practice. I think previously it was maybe seen as a little bit sort of flimsy, but it's increasingly being used, and we are increasingly using it in research projects, in academic work, and it's being sought out from us as well. So big text heavy slide, obviously not going to read through all of this. This will be in the resources package at the end. But why is lived experience useful? It provides rich qualitative understanding of how people experience the world. So unlike a survey where it maybe covers a lot of people, but for relatively shallow understanding, you might speak to less people, but get that much deeper dive into those experiences. It helps you interpret other forms of data. So for instance, if you've used a quantitative form of analysis as well, this will help you have insight into that. And in terms of influencing and informing decision-making, lived experience makes that data real. If you're going to put forward policy recommendations based on your social impact assessment, having that real experience, those quotes from people who've taken part in your intervention, is a lot more impactful than just some numbers, and it presents a stronger case, I think, when advocating for some kind of social change. So now on more to our particular methodology, and I'm just keeping an eye on the time here. So community reporting. So community reporting is a very fancy way of saying it's a digital storytelling method. So we use phones, tablets, audio recorders to gather and share lived experiences. And it's what community reporting is, the framework which helps us present those stories in a way that can translate into real world change. And this diagram sort of simplifies it into a cycle of gathering stories is the first step, and you might sometimes hear this in some of the reports and things I'll be sharing with you at the end as probing, which sounds terrible, literally finding out what people have to say. And that's, they're going out and asking questions of people's experience, in this case of the intervention you've staged. Then there is curating stories, which we often call sense making, and that's where you, as a group or as individuals, will look into those stories and pull out those insights, those impacts, and group them together and formulate them. And lastly, mobilizing stories or responding. And this can be anything from sharing stories on social media through to producing impact reports, through to turning that into policy recommendations or holding events and so on. And what underpins everything we do and what ensures consistency across this kind of social impact method, because obviously with qualitative data, that consistency can sometimes not be there just simply because people will have different things to say. So we use what we call responsible storytelling to underpin everything. And this is kind of embedded in all our training we do to train people to be community reporters and to go out and gather those stories. And it makes sure that people's stories are shared in a just way, in an anti-extractive way, and helps to avoid power imbalances, ensure inadvertent harm, and ensure there is no inadvertent harm, sorry, and to try and prevent interviewer bias as well, sneaking in there. And it covers those areas of ethics and values, content and context, permissions and consent, and safety and well-being. And those 4 pillars should be present in all story gathering when dealing with lived experience. And we will go into things, but things like you should never share a story that hasn't been given explicit written consent, for instance, that your story should only be used in the way that the storyteller has consented it. You shouldn't ask leading questions, and so on and so forth. And the process we gather these stories by is called dialogue interviews, which really is just a fancy way of saying having a conversation. And the best sort of dialogue interviews that we've ever sort of recorded, they do just sound like people having a chat. And the conversation will always be directed by the storyteller, not by the interviewer. The interviewer is more of a conduit through which the storyteller can share their lived experience. They facilitate the conversation, but they do not lead it. So you will ask an opening question, and that's a conversation starter. So it might be as simple as, what has changed in your life since you took part in this project? And they will start answering. And as the interviewer, you then actively listen to what they say. And then you respond based on that. So you might go, oh, you mentioned this thing. Could you tell me a bit more about that? Or, oh, you said you didn't like this aspect. Why was that? And then you stop the interview when it comes to a natural end. So sometimes dialogue interviews can be 30, 40 minutes long. Sometimes they're only 10 minutes long, and it will vary. But the key thing there is that you're not projecting your bias, you're not projecting your agenda. That is being set by the storyteller. And that can be difficult from the point of view of a social impact report, because they might not say what you're expecting or wanting them to say. And from this point, it's a very bottom-up process. The framework is there to facilitate the storytellers telling you what the impact has been. You are not deciding what the impact should be and then finding out if that happened. And the great thing about this is we'll also tell you about unintended impacts, additional impacts, and so on. Now, I'm going to show an example story that is only a minute long, so I don't think it will push us over, but that will just give you a quick demonstration of what a lived experience story should look like.
My story is about when I first moved to the area. I didn't know many people. The only couple of people I knew were my family. So I wanted to get to know people. So my way of getting to know people was I found out about an organisation called the U3A, which takes part, which they use the community centre at the church where I go to play Mahjong and bridge. So whilst I've been here, I've been learning how to play Mahjong and bridge. Mahjong is a Chinese game. It's a bit like Scrabble, and the lady that's in charge of the Mahjong and bridge, she said to me it was probably easier for me to play Mahjong than it would be for me to play bridge. I've met quite a few people with the being there, and it's more of a social event for me than anything else. There's a lady comes from Eccles, and she says it's more social for her as well. She gets a taxi, which is quite costly for her. So yeah, she enjoys it as well. She said she wouldn't come otherwise. But we have a cup of tea at half time. Everybody can talk to each other, but everybody's a real nice bunch, they really are.
So obviously only picked quite a lightweight story for the sake of an example, but you can see there the intervention or the change is that he joined this group, and then the things in his life there that you can extrapolate is that, you know, making connections, making friends, getting out of the house and so on. And that leads us neatly into curation, which is the next stage. And I won't spend too long on this, but this is where you look at the stories you've gathered, you look at what is being said. So what's the subject matter? And you'll have obviously your top subject matter, which is these people are talking about their involvement in your project. But then what are the other topics that pull out of that? You know, what are those? And with social impact, the topics would usually be the impacts themselves. How is it being said? So how are they describing them? Is it positive? Is it negative? Is there a particular emotion attached? And again, we look at that across all the stories and find those commonalities or indeed the anomalies. And why, oops, sorry, went back there. Why is it being said? So then we look at the context of the stories as well. And that'll be demographic and so on. And then that comes together to produce the findings, which is identified and understood as a collective set of insights. Now, in the resources I'll share at the end, there's some example reports we've produced for various projects using lived experience stories, so you can see how this data comes together in a report format. Now, I'm not going to show the next video that I've got because it's too long, but again, it's in that resources folder for you. And you compare the community reporting with other methodologies to produce richer data. So in this case, I've highlighted ripple effect mapping, which is an impact assessment tool we have been using a lot in conjunction with community reporting. And it's participatory impact evaluation, and it assesses community-based interventions. It enables participants and stakeholders to reflect on and visually map the intended changes of an intervention and the unintended changes. And it captures those ripples of impact going out from that central change, and also potential future impacts that maybe haven't happened yet but are on their way. And it's been applied across various settings: public health, community gardening, volunteering. We've applied it across various projects ourselves, and you'll see it included in some of the reports and things in the resources section. And it complements community reporting really well in terms of impact assessment. And again, if anyone has any questions further about either of these, you can of course email me after the session, and my contacts are here. You can use the QR code here to access the resources I've mentioned. And I think I can't access the chat, but I've sent the link over to the team, so I'm sure they will share it in the chat at some point for you as well. So that was a very whistle-stop tour of community reporting as a methodology. It's something we usually use for over a few days of training, so condensing it into 10 minutes is a lot. But I think hopefully we've still got some time for some questions, and I'll just stop sharing my screen.
Round of applause in the room spectating this. We do have time. So we do have time for questions. I don't see yet questions online, so I'll take questions in the room. Again, speak loud when you ask your question. Questions for Sarah? Yes.
Thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed your presentation. I wanted to ask that because you showed a video recording, I wanted to ask if you have seen differences when people are recorded and when people are not recorded in the things that they say, and also gender and racial dynamics in terms of who's talking to whom, and how do you take this into account, and what do you do about it? Yeah, a little reflection on that.
Thank you. Great question. So in terms of differences, it varies. Some people are very comfortable being recorded, so it makes no difference. Some people less so. We always give people the option whether they want to be recorded fully with video or audio only. And you will find people who maybe, for various reasons, don't want to have their face on a recording, will do an audio recording instead. At the moment, we only deal with stories that are recorded, obviously, because we need a record of them for insight. So we would never record the story of someone who wasn't comfortable being recorded in the first place. But you will find sometimes people are a little bit more forthcoming when their face is not on camera, especially if there is a bit of a power imbalance, perhaps, in what people are being asked. So, for instance, if you were doing research on behalf of a local authority about people in receipt of benefits, they might not be wanting to criticise the council too heavily because they might worry that there could be fallback. So in those cases, people might choose to remain anonymous, which is absolutely fine. We never put names on stories, and they may wish to keep their face off camera, which is also fine. So we do tend to ask people what they'd be most comfortable with. In terms of gender and race, first of all, PVM is an actively anti-racist organisation, or at least we're on that journey. So we do try to make sure when we are training groups of community reporters that the group is as diverse as possible. So if people do, so for instance, if we are interviewing, for instance, Somali refugees, we would try and train other Somali refugees or people who are Somali to do that work, which is what happened in previous projects. Obviously, that is not always going to be possible, but we do try to do that as much as possible, and we try to have diversity across gender as well, so that people can be interviewed by someone they are comfortable speaking to. Generally speaking, because of that, we've never found there has been a major issue with imbalances, especially because the style is conversational. So anybody who is interviewing should just be listening and then asking follow-up questions based on what is said. So there shouldn't, it shouldn't be a case of background influencing what is asked, and the opener question will always be decided beforehand as well. But it is something that comes up in training, and we do address it with community reporters to make sure any kind of imbalances based on any factors are kept to a minimum. But it is a peer-to-peer method, so usually people will be being interviewed by people of a similar background to themselves. So hopefully that has answered your question.
Thank you so much. We can take one more question for Sarah, or we can take it afterwards. Yes, please.
Thanks, Sarah. I found that really interesting. What you presented made me think of something that I don't think we've spoken about today, which was about who sets the agenda for what data is collected. And when you described the methods being quite open, obviously with, start off questions, but then, so I just wondered, is there ever a tension there between, allowing the people set the agenda of what they want to say was important and what the people who are asking you to gather this data want to get out of it? So is there ever a tension there with that? Because, I'm just wondering, when it comes to lived experience, voices being gathered, you have this, this ladder of participation, that conceptual model, and co-design or I can't remember, is it co-design or co-participation seen as kind of the top perfect ideal version of this, and that's very much about the people who are involved in being asked the questions, setting the design agenda. So I just wondered about that.
Oh, there is tension all the time. It's the most difficult part of this is usually the tension. So very occasionally we will work with partners who are very much into co-production, co-design, and they are very open to letting the participants create that agenda, and that is the perfect ideal. Unfortunately, I would say about 2/3 of partners are less open, especially when they are like local authorities or other public institutions, who very much, although they will say they want the participants to set the agenda, they only want that as long as the participants are saying what they want them to say. Which I'm sure everybody who has ever done any social impact work will know that feeling. And as we are often brought in as an external organisation, we can meet that challenge sort of by basically sort of, we lay out very clearly at the beginning what we do and how we do it. And when then that tension comes along, we just have to remind them that, well, that's not what we're here for. And if you want that kind of social impact assessment, you probably need additional data, or not to have recruited us to work with you in the first place, which has been said before now. But that tension will always exist, because people will always say something that isn't what the people carrying out the assessment necessarily want to hear. But often that is where the best work lies, because is it really impact assessment if you are just hearing what you hope to hear and want to hear all the time? Because we all know there are no perfect projects, as much as we would love them to be. So that tension is there, and we do address it by having to just point out that this is what our methodology is, and this is what you kind of signed up to see. We tend to find that when that tension exists, by the time we finish, by the time we've done our final event or our final film or our final report, actually they're back on board, and they've sort of seen that there is a lot of value to hear in this. And we often find that secondary projects come out of that, where they then decide to investigate the holes, as it were, or the negatives. But yeah, again, sorry for a slightly waffly reply there, but I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, no, it did. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Yeah, I know that you're staying with us a little longer, so maybe there'll be other questions at the end of the session. Sorry, I should look here. But now I want to move on to our third panelist. I have the pleasure now to welcome Liva Spatse, Project Manager at the Social Entrepreneurship Association of Latvia. I hope I pronounced your last name correctly. I'm not sure. Which has developed several tools to approach social impact assessment, but also to communicate about the results once you've done that. Thank you so much, Liva, for being with us. The floor is yours.
Hi, hello, very happy to be here, and I have this pleasure and honor to speak as the last speaker, because actually I will kind of speak about a little bit about everything what has been said. So I think it kind of comes up very nicely. But yeah, I will speak more about why social impact matter, and we already touched upon this in the first part of the conversation. And then I'll tell you a little bit more about the social impact management toolbox that we have created, which is a very practical tools to use, and also the social impact communication guidelines. But yeah, my name is Liva Spatse, and you pronounce my surname almost perfectly, so great work. And I'm a project manager in Social Entrepreneurship Association of Latvia. We are a member organization based in Latvia and working to develop social entrepreneurship for a long-term change in Latvia.
At the moment, we unite around 130 members, which are both social enterprises, different NGO organizations, also enterprises who are thinking maybe more about social entrepreneurship in general, and the individual people who maybe have an idea and they want to develop it or just interested in the field. And the three main activities of our work is advocacy. So we work also with the Ministry of Welfare, which is a responsible ministry in Latvia for social entrepreneurship. We work also with regional partners like municipalities and other regional public bodies, and also actually internationally, we are part of several international network organizations for social entrepreneurship and social economy in general. The second area of our work is the capacity building of our members. So we offer different trainings, and during different projects, we concentrate on needs that our members have, for example, for measuring social impact, and then provide this opportunity for members to develop their business. And the third one is more raising awareness about what is social entrepreneurship and talking about it more loudly so that everybody would know and everybody would like to participate. But yes, making social impact matter. So what is an impact? We already discussed this with Mentimeter, and I guess everybody understands it. And we talk about any effect that organizations' activities are causing. So we often ask what has changed after our activities. So what have we done? How have we made this change? But we also ask the question, what wouldn't have happened if we haven't organized our activities? So I think this is also a very nice way how to think about the changes you make, of thinking, if I haven't done this, or if I haven't made this specific product or done a specific activity, what changes wouldn't have happened? And already previously we were talking about that the impact could be direct and indirect. It can be positive or actually also negative, and it can be intended or unintended, because many of our activities, maybe we don't realize the impact that we create, and maybe we do create some negative impact. For example, if we are organizing an activity for young people, but it's something really boring and not interesting for them, so they just waste their time. So what's our impact to them? And what we want to achieve is to have this positive and intended impact. And therefore we have to actually follow up our social impact. And the reasons why we have to talk about social impact, I think it was mentioned very nicely in the first part of the event. But basically, I think it's an opportunity to understand if you are reaching your goals, if your activities are on purpose, if it's something you want to reach. And also it's an opportunity to improve the work you do. And so we have created an impact management toolbox. It's a very simple box of tools consisting of 9 tools. And these tools are nothing that we invented ourselves. These are already tools that have been used by many people and organizations before. We just try to gather it in a way that will help the organizations to actually use it, and maybe it's more like simple tools. The primary target group of this project was youth organizations. So we wanted to show them that by using these simple tools, they can start to understand the impact. They can a little bit test it and see which tools work better for them. They can see that it's maybe not so difficult to start using them. And to actually capture the changes that they are making. And this impact management toolbox, as I mentioned, consists of 9 tools. So problem tree, goal tree, stakeholder map. Those are the first 3 tools that help you kind of to understand the problem you are solving, help you to understand the goal that you want to reach, and see these different causes and effects, and maybe it can help you to focus your activity on a certain specific point, because very often I think we imagine that we will solve these big world problems, but maybe it's more effective if we focus it and start from this like a kind of first focused area. Yeah, and of course, stakeholder map will help you to understand which are the more relevant stakeholders. And again, if your resources are not that big, then you can again concentrate on the specific stakeholders that would most impact your activities and the aim that you want to reach. Then we have organizational model canvas, theory of change, and beneficiary journey map, which again will help you to put it in kind of like a timeline, understanding which are these connection points where you meet your users, your stakeholders. Also will help to understand what you want to achieve. Of course, what's the impact you want to achieve with your activities. And yeah, in the step-by-step basis, you can see how you are slowly getting there, or you can see which is the weakest point maybe where you have to work a little bit more. And then the last three are measurement plan, research method lists, and impact indicator list. Again, something that previous speakers already spoke about it. But these tools will help you to choose the best methods that will suit you for your purposes, will help you to set the impact indicators that will help you to understand that you are reaching your impact, and set a plan that you can update and recheck and come back to it and use it on a daily basis. So these are the tools that we offer, and I hope later the organizers can share a link to this toolbox. Because for each of these tools, we have an explanation. So we describe about the tool. We just talk briefly when and how to use it. We also have the feedback from the users, so where they found it more useful to apply these tools, how it will help in their work. We have a step-by-step guidance how to use it, and also our colleague from Estonian organization Stories for Impact created a video where again he explains how to use these tools and what it is. We also have the tools, each of these tools, in two different formats, also a printable format in a better quality, so you can actually print it on a bigger piece of paper, so you can use the Post-its and practically work on it. We have also field example, so if there is a tool that you don't understand, or if you want to see the example filled in, then this is available as well. And we provide also variations of use, because all of these tools you can use it on a basic level, so very briefly, quickly on a surface level. You can, but you can also deep dive in and ask these why questions and split it into like more kind of focused areas. So all of this is available on our webpage for each tool. So whenever you need it, you know it's accessible there. But when we measure our impact, very often we are happy that we are doing it, but we don't share the results. And actually, as some of the previous speakers already said, if we don't share the results, nobody knows it, and it almost, as if it almost didn't happen, right? So we have created also social impact communication guidelines, which again, in this very simple way, tries to plan the communication plan for your impact communication. And why it is necessary? Because first of all, your organization can gain more visibility, and you can maybe attract some supporters for your ideas. You can show your expertise on a specific topic and encourage the discussions about these important issues. You can potentially attract more financial support, and I think this is an important point, because the better you can prove that your work is valuable, the easiest it is to actually kind of point it out in different project proposals, or in some discussions, maybe a discussion with some funder or so on. Yeah, and attract more new members, volunteers who want to just add their hand to your purpose. And these communication guidelines, again, are made in a very colorful, easy way, with these different questions, different things pointed out, where to look, what to think about. And you can see, you will find the information on how to build your communication strategy, and also these very practical tools that you can fill in with specific questions you can think about. So why, like what's your objective, what's your target audience, what's your key message, and how you will do it. You will be able to think about internal and external communication, because I think very often we think about external communication like social media, but sometimes it's maybe even more valuable to share our social impact internally in our team, because if our team understands where we are going, what we want to achieve, it will kind of boost their motivation. They will understand the goal more clear. And yeah, how to create compelling message. Again, we provide these different questions, what to think about, what can be the topics of your communication, and yeah, how to speak, for example, with the stakeholders, exactly like Sarah was mentioning in her presentation before. You will find also these different channels that you can use, also information about video and audio content, and some important things like data regulation or parental consent if you are working with young people. And again, you will see some examples with explanations, with some points you have to keep in mind, of annual reports, press release, opinion article, infographics, letters, and social media posts, and so on. So I think it's a very nice way, if you're already communicating your social impact, you can just recheck, maybe there's something that you can use and refresh your communication, or otherwise, if it's something new, then I think it's very useful just to go through and see these different ways how to do it. And yeah, I hope you will receive the presentation, and there you will get all the links to the toolbox, to the video playlist, and also social communication impact guidelines. Thank you very much. I try to be quick and brief, and yeah, if you want to learn more about our organization, then you can find us on social media, or you can write me an email, or check our annual report and our impact report on our webpage. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. For the moment, I can't hear you. Your microphone is off.
I was saying thank you, and we're going to take some questions. If there are some questions in the room, please go ahead. I don't think we have questions in the chat yet. Question for Liva. Okay, I always have questions, but yeah, no, we talked a bit about this earlier, but how would you say an organization that is, as I asked earlier, Rafael, the same question, but if an organization feels a little bit under pressure already to deliver what they want to deliver, their services or their products, what's best to get started? Is there a way that is more efficient to choose a framework or a tool? How do you get started? How do you cut the fear? I guess you have to do this with the beneficiaries at SEAL.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed. I think I like also the discussion that started in the first part of the event. That is always a tricky answer, because sometimes when we want to do it like in a big way and start with these very difficult tools, because that's something that everybody knows or expects you to use. But I think the best would be really then to pick one simple tool and started with that. Because once you try it out, once you see what works for you, what doesn't work for you, then you can kind of adjust it and add some things. So for example, I think a theory of change is a really nice tool that can be used. Also, again, it can be used in a more difficult, complex way of this, or you can use it in a very simple way to start thinking about your impact. So I think it's very important not to be scared, to try out, because as we talked today, that there is no one perfect tool that will suit everyone. So it's maybe you will come up with your perfect tool by combining the elements of different tools, but you will not understand it unless you try it.
Right. We could take one more question. Yes. Yes.
Maybe what I like so much about the power of stories is that it leaves the choice of language to the people that matter in the first place. Whereas I have this fear, if you respond to the request of the commission or some other funder, we very often adopt also their perspective and their language, because we want to tell them how good we do and then spend the money responsibly in their terms. So we enter them this very easily in this discourse that is actually defined by the funder, whereas maybe our idea initially was something totally different, or at least partly different, and maybe even fundamentally different. Where it is about, before the break, the lady from the social farm was telling about the joy of size. That is what you do it for, but that's not what you get paid for. So then you start about educating, and you start about getting them to work, and I don't know, whatever. And very easily then you shift your focus, because you need to deliver what you promised to deliver, count what you promised, and you don't count it, because what we count is what matters. But if we count what matters to the others, how do we keep our focus on what was actually what matters to the people we work for?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good question, and I think we are also struggling with the same issue, and I think every organization is struggling with the same issue, because, for example, public authorities like our Ministry of Welfare is also asking some sort of impact measurement, but we can see that they ask these qualitative data, so numbers. They want to see, I don't know, how often you did it, how many stakeholders you reached. But what's more powerful, for example, if you communicate your impact on social media, is this real life true story. And if you managed with, at least I think, if we manage with our activity to change for the better a life of one person, it's like a bigger impact than having a workshop organized for 30 people where nobody actually listened to what you said. So we try to combine these things. We try to still collect this quantitative data that maybe more funders are asking, or public institutions, and just show that we are doing it. But then at the same time, we try to also use the storytelling by explaining that, okay, this kid, I don't know, got more friends, or like he was able to go to school and integrate himself or herself in this environment. Therefore, also like his parents could, I don't know, again, go to work and do their daily stuff. So we try to use these stories. We always, next to the data, we try to actually also show these strong and powerful stories. And I really hope that at some point also public institutions will start to appreciate it more and will understand that maybe it's not about the big numbers, but it's about actually these life changes or help to the person and individual.
But the crazy thing is that public institutions also need to account for the money they spend. So we all spin on the same wheel, counting successes in a particular way, which is maybe not what it is all meant to be. It's not that public officers, by definition, are very strict economists, but they also have to it's tax money and that. So I often recognize these same stories and we stay within this limited game.
Thanks.
It's like
so much.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
like
you
this
want to react?
vicious circle where we for every like grant that we receive, we just try to explain them that the most important that we reached our objective. It doesn't matter, you know, those small things, but of course I understand them as well, because they have been asked for specific, I don't know, numbers or something. So yeah, it's challenging. So it's like all communication all the time and trying to find the compromise.
Thank you so much, Eva. We can give your have a surprise guest. So for the last few minutes of our hybrid event today, we have Katja Bekos from Prisma Foundation here in Slovenia. And you kindly proposed to present something that came out of a European funded project. Please tell us more.
Yeah, it was just listening to this whole communication, I mean, the whole panel discussion the last few hours, and also before entering the phase in SERIGO project when the pilots have to prepare their impact measurement. I just wanted to share in a community of practice that there is a project already there, social economy transition skills, that we are doing together with DIESIS network, Open Impact, Politecnica Milano, not that I forget someone, social goods, and all digital. So what we are aiming for is, we just tested the courses for their digital courses for social economy organizations, and also for the ones who are working with social economy. And a big part of it is also measuring social impact. So there are theories of social, theory of change in it. You have some tools where you can really, this is just a presentation of the project. Right now the project ended the testing phase, and we are going to move the platform. Right now it's on the Sparks platform, but we are going to move it to another platform which is more suitable for users to use. So I kindly invite you also to test it when it's going to be online again. I mean, right now I can also share it and you can test it in Sparks. It's just it's great what I've heard today, everything on social impact, and I think we can already upgrade some informations and put the methods that are not only we already have in the sets social economic transitions, because we already have qualitative measurement also in the social impact measurement, but definitely we can add more methods and also include more contacts thanks to the great panelists. So thank you for giving me the opportunity only to share with the whole community.
Thank you so much. Share the link in the chat. We'll share all of the data also with you in the room. This brings us to the end of our hybrid event today. So I want to thank again all of our speakers, so Shannon, Sanya, Matthias, Rafaela, Sarah, Liva, and Katja. Thank you so much. Yes. Warmly thank Katja and Dushka for co-organizing this with us. It was not easy, so thank you. Thanks to my colleagues Marisol here and Yulen online. You can't see him, but he's been managing the online part of this event. So thank you. Please have a look at the information that has been given. Join our CUP if you haven't already. All the information is shared through the CUP channel, all of the materials, all of the relevant resources and events. So please do so, and see you next time.
Thank you.